Well, nice to meet everyone. People who were on this a few minutes ago got an early preview, but for anyone I haven't met yet, my name is Dana Sheedy. I'm based in Southern California. I am a current consultant for Spotify and Taco Bell, working a lot in their marketing, media, entertainment space, matching media brand partnerships with them, and kind of overall marketing media strategy. Also have worked with Apple, State Farm, Nissan, a few other clients, mainly in that entertainment media space. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this one today. I think you guys are coming in at such a strange time with being in school and obviously this program, and I'm sure very many other opportunities. The market's just a little bit different right now, and I have never worked from home and I have not seen an office for 8 months, and it's been an interesting transition. So some of this will just kind of dive into the current state of what's going on, who's been affected. And then I think the most important and kind of exciting thing I'm excited to share with you guys is more so around kind of tips and tricks and best practices that have been used while working remote that you guys can implement with schoolwork and with projects and positions like this. So we will dive on in, and feel free to interrupt with any questions as well. So this is something that I thought was always funny is, you know, like there are these two sides to the coin, and I think this is a good setup for us. So if you want to work at home and you can work for yourself and you can choose your own hours, but at the same time, there is this disconnection. There is no disconnection between what really home and personal life looks like. And a lot of people are struggling with that right now. So we're going to dive into kind of some tips and tricks to avoid that. And trying to find kind of an escape to get your personal life back a bit as well. So just as I mentioned, kind of we'll dive into the state of affairs right now, kind of the impacts on various businesses, who's thriving, who's not so much thriving, some best practices overall for working remotely, what we think the future might look like, and a couple helpful hints to leave you with. So diving right into where we're at. So a lot of stats in here overall, you'll see, I think from this, you'll see an overwhelming percent of employees right now are working from home. 81% of employees have adopted policies allowing people to work from home since March. And now 2/3 of our global economy is actually being sustained by people who are working at home. So this has grown 173%, obviously, with the crisis. But also at the same time, employers are saving a lot of money where they're not having to house employees with overhead costs, even insurance, something that goes into things you don't think about. But employees are able to work remotely, thus $74 billion this year in overhead costs will be cut. So there are some positives for our employers as well. So how's it going? 88% of employees say that they would prefer working remotely, which I don't think is a huge surprise. I think that overwhelming percent have enjoyed the transition and being able to be closer to friends and family. 62% of workers say that they would actually take a pay cut of sorts in order to stay working at home indefinitely in some sort of permanent or hybrid role. And employers with these work from home allowances expect their turnover rates to fall significantly when these practices are implemented overall. So there are obviously positives, but there are some implications on business as well. There is a lot of challenges for employers to set up like this overnight. My example, I went from working in an office 9 to 5 with 1,100 employees in it. We were told on a Wednesday that we were not coming in the following day as just a practice work from home because we thought we were going to go that way more permanently in the near future. So we were told to stay home on Thursday to let the company know any IT struggles and report back on Friday when we were back in the office. We all took our things home on Wednesday night. Thursday, the world kind of shut down. We didn't go in and then we never went back. So I intended on leaving for one work day and ended up leaving now for what is the better part of the year. So with that, when my company at Taco Bell told us to stay and work remotely, a lot of that was testing the security system and the internet to make sure you could still get in. And that's something that a lot of employers weren't ready for necessarily. So there's been a lot of security breaches. The last stat here says that 31% increase in security breaches in Q2 alone. Moving back up here, a lot of the workforce is in an older demographic, and it's a demographic that has not adopted tech in a lot of ways. The Zoom and video chat might be new to a lot of us, but we're a little more tech savvy than some of our older counterparts. So adoption of these virtual tech components has been really difficult, or at least was really difficult in the upfront. And then something else I think doesn't get talked about enough, that employers are having a hard time getting their employees to take PTO or to take their vacation time. And in a lot of places, whatever they don't take has to be paid. So depending on what kind of region you're in, obviously policies are different, but essentially because employees are not taking vacation time, there's expected to be really large payouts at the end of this year and into Q1 of next year because this vacation is still there. And it's also like not in, on top of employees wanting to encourage employers wanting to encourage employees to take this time so they don't have these payouts. It's also a mental health struggle that employers are trying to get employees to take a break, essentially. So we'll go into what businesses are doing well and maybe businesses that aren't so well. I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, but just to level set here, a lot of the at-home categories, beer, wine, and liquor, are doing really well in comparison to the alternative, which was going out to bars and restaurants. Internet TV, mail order retail, a lot of online shopping has increased, or the brick and mortar, not so much. Pet and animal food manufacturers, I thought was an interesting one. A lot more pet adoption, pet purchases that have happened while people are at home. And then streaming is obviously another one. Netflix, Hulu, Peloton, all of these kind of virtual streamed in companies, obviously working for Spotify. I've seen this firsthand. So it's, although thriving, trying to make sure that we're kind of keeping up. And then what businesses are struggling, again, no surprises here. Movie theaters, I think that this stat was really big to me, that 69% of movie theaters in the US will be forced to file for bankruptcy or to close permanently. And performing arts, I'm sure we've all heard about all of the festivals and music tours we aren't able to see this year. Surprisingly, this will bring about 33% of musicians to be forced to leave the industry. And that's an interesting one too. I have a little bit more context on that from Spotify. It's so strange to think about how all of these different people in different walks of life are affected in this domino effect. And a lot of the way that a lot of recording contracts work from big labels. So for instance, Sony Music has an artist signed on for X amount of time or X amount of projects. And because although they're not touring right now, their contract is still kind of running out. So the fact that these some of these contracts with these labels are going to run out before the pandemic is over, it really is making a decision for a lot of musicians and artists that they're kind of going to be done with music once their contract is over and once this pandemic is over. And because they're making most of their money touring and touring isn't happening, it's going to be difficult for them to kind of sustain. And then we are going to see a lot of festivals and music venues closing permanently. In New York City, Broadway alone claims to report a $2 billion of a hit. And also the travel, airlines, hotels, I don't think we need to, no surprises there, that's obviously a struggling industry. This is an interesting piece too. I think that I'm sure you guys have heard some of these pieces, wanted to dive into a little bit more of how employers are supporting employees in this transition. I think there's a lot of surveys done of what internal surveys of what employers can do to support their employees a little stronger. Every employer is different depending on what the resources. Obviously, an airline industry is hit really hard. They're not going to be giving out corporate stipends to protect their employers, but some of the industries that have done a little bit better are able to make that transition a little easier. So work from home allowances is one of them. Google, Spotify, a number of brands have given employers up to a certain amount to invest in at-home work equipment. So if that's a desk chair, a printer, those sorts of things. It's very common to get a stipend for your internet, your cell phone bill, any sort of hotspot, things that make working from home a little easier. Spotify actually also offered us a grocery benefit. So I get like a preloaded card it's loaded every month with money for groceries or for lunch, because it was a benefit in the office that breakfast and lunch was at one time provided. Now that they're not doing that, they wanted to compensate in a similar way. Mental health and wellness are also two pieces that you're seeing a larger shift towards. There are digital meditation apps that employers are covering the cost for. They are providing resources for mental health and therapy. Also a wellness stipend, encouraging people to get outside and get active. So if you attach your phone to potentially a Nike Run app and can show your employer that you did go for a run or get exercise that day, there are certain, if it's $15, if it's $20, that you're getting, 20 US dollars, that you're getting as an opportunity to make sure that you're kind of getting out and moving. There's a really big acceptance of a flexible schedule. I think one of my favorite anecdotes of this entire thing, in the first couple weeks, I remember coworkers that have small children and pets that were just trying to lock themselves in a room and get rid of any sort of distraction. And it was almost seen as a deterrent if your child was in the frame or your cat walked in front of the computer. And then about a couple weeks in, as we realized this was kind of the new normal and we were going to be in it for a while, employers definitely started kind of embracing those interruptions and giving grace to their employees that had more distractions around. It's very common to not work the traditional 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. lifestyle anymore, dependent on setting your kids up for remote learning. And making sure that all of your bases are covered at home so you can work, regardless of if that schedule needs to move up a few hours or back a few hours. So in the traditional sense where kids were distracting for the workplace, now it's kind of an embraced window into seeing some of your employers' homes and families and getting a little bit closer to them that way when you don't have that back and forth in the office. No business travel, I think that one's no surprise. A lot of corporations have stopped business travel through 2021 already. And weekly bulletins, I think it's really popular every Friday to get a COVID update of an office reopening or new employee benefits, just making sure that, or just so you know that you have that constant contact with an employer, or that employer is constantly kind of keeping their ear to the ground on what is new and any potential updates for getting back into the office. Any questions so far? Nothing? I know that was a lot. So if there's anything you want to dive into more detail to, feel free to shout and we can go back. So here's some best practices. And these are kind of things that in the beginning, and I would say even halfway through a few months back, like I guess we don't know what halfway through is quite yet. Things that have obviously been challenging, and I think that none of this will come as a shock to any of you. But I do think with every challenge, there's kind of a way to combat that. So these are things that I've picked up from the industry itself. I've researched, and I just think some clever pieces to take with you, as I'm sure you guys are all navigating doing a lot of work in your own home or trying to get a break, trying to maintain your sanity while you're balancing out your personal and professional life. So this is a big one for me. I think maintaining working hours is huge. It is a conventional schedule is something that you are used to when you were in an office. And a lot of times you're leaving the office at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. because that's when everyone else is, and that's when the lights go off. And it's not necessarily when you're done with work. It's when you look at the clock and realize you only have an hour left in the office, so you have to scrape to get an hour's worth of work done. That's not really a thing when you're at home. You know, you're not commuting, you're not driving, so you kind of make up for that time and you can work a little bit harder there. So you have to know when you need to shut down. And a lot of times that might even be just keeping a firm understanding of I work 9 to 5, or once I'm done with this project, I'm closing my computer, and setting yourself to it. It seems like so simple, and I don't think I'm telling you guys anything you don't know, but just reinforcing that it's okay when your work location is 10 feet away from your relaxing location. It's easy to stay on longer, but that eventually will kind of get to you. Have a dedicated space. I think that this is more easily said than done for a lot of people. I know we have some New York City friends in here, and I'm sure that there are a lot of other locations that are similar in that apartment space, or your square footage is not the largest. But even if it's something like you were sitting on a different side of the couch than you were when you relax, I think it can be as easy as that. It's something about being able to know that this is dedicated work and this is dedicated relaxing, and not having those two places kind of coincide. When you were at work, when you were in an office, you always had that ability to kind of shut down and get away when you went home, and that needs to continue for your mental health. So even if the space isn't an office, it should just be a space you utilize for work. So I know people that have a kitchen table, and they've had the same kitchen table that they lived with their family of 4 in for years. And you know how people are creatures of habit to an extent. If every day at dinner you sat on the right side of the table, maybe just work from the left and then switch back when it's time for play. But I think kind of drawing those boundaries between your space and your time will help you kind of distinguish the two. Develop a signal for your housemates. So this is going to sound silly, but I think you guys have probably all ran into something where you are on a video chat. You might be on it right now. There are people behind you, there are people in the other room, and they're making noise, or cognizant of the fact that they should not be making noise because you're on a call. Sometimes it's easier than others. If you're in an office, you can close the door, great. A lot of us don't have that luxury. I don't even have that luxury. So just develop a system for people around you to know when you're working on something, when you need dedicated headspace, when you can't be bothered, when you are on a call that you need them to be quiet around, when you're on a call and potentially you're not on mute and they're okay to make noise in the kitchen. I think obviously closing your door is easy. The sticky note trick will go a very long way. I think the sticky note trick is like one of the most popular ones in my office currently. And that's just taking like whatever sticky note, post-it note you have on hand. And if you make sure that everyone around you kind of knows the understanding that if you have the sticky note up on the back of your computer, it means that you're on mute, or you're not on mute, or that you just need time to think. I also have a coworker who uses like a red plastic cup. Red plastic cup is right side up when it's okay to bother them. It is flipped over when they like need silence. And I know it sounds silly, but I think it'll go a really long way, and it is a way for you to be kind of a courteous housemate as well as ensure that you kind of get that headspace that you need. Use a dedicated browser. This is so simple, but so easy to separate work and play. So whatever you want to use. I use Chrome for work. I use Firefox for anything personal. And that is that when I'm on work, all of my browsers are up there. So I have my email, I have my slides, I have any sort of research I'm doing. And then my Firefox is my Netflix, it's my Hulu, it's my online shopping, it's my personal email. And it's just something that I even know that everything, if I open the wrong one, everything is logged out. So if I try to open Netflix on my work browser, it asks me to sign in, whereas I'm already signed in on the other one. It's just a way to deconnect and kind of keeping those two pieces separate. In the same way we were talking about having a dedicated workspace, having a dedicated browser history for one, or dedicated saved logins on another, I think will do a lot for just keeping those two pieces separate, even if you're on the same kind of computer for it. And it's headspace that you guys deserve. eat in the kitchen. I think you guys have probably all seen the tweets and memes about how everyone is, gaining the COVID-19. But eating is distracting, and it's human nature to kind of treat that as a stress reliever and almost reward yourself by eating when the kitchen is so close. It's not like you're packing a lunch and going to work. But it also is, it's a slippery slope. You're eating a snack, you can't work with both hands while you do it, so you end up lightly browsing. Half an hour later, you're not working, you're doing something else. Also, because eating is kind of that sense of reward or distraction, give yourself a reward and give yourself a break. Once you narrow through a project or hammer something out for an hour, take a step away from the computer, go to the kitchen, have a moment for yourself. In the same way that you would when you're in an office setting, you have those kind of, they call them water talk or water cooler moments. So meaning like just quick conversations you're having with your colleagues in the kitchen, in the cafeteria, like walking by. You don't get those anymore. So you need to stretch your legs a little bit. You need to find another way to kind of break away from it. And snacking, eating lunch, breakfast, whatever that looks like, is a great way to do so. So this one's interesting. I think you guys, I feel like everyone is familiar with the sleep cycle component, where you're falling asleep, you have REM sleep, all those sorts of things. I'm not a scientist, but you guys, I'm sure, have heard this before. So the ultradian cycle is something similar, but it's for waking hours. So this is something that, and we've probably all learned this in school when we were very young, about handling kind of productivity for a certain duration of time. The average human can be productive for 90 minutes straight. That's like barring no caffeine, like making sure you had a good night rest. It's about 90 minutes. After that, you really do need a break to have that less intense task, which is called your ultradian cycle. So you want to push yourself to be kind of hyper proactive in that 90-minute time span, and then afterwards give yourself some downtime. Otherwise, you are going to get burned out. I love this little meme on the side that like drink water, get sunlight. Like these are things that your body needs just like a plant. And another way too to figure out what your cycle is, start grinding on a task, see how long you're able to kind of really focus on it before you get burned out. And be mindful, like if you're working on something really boring or something you're not interested in and you can only last 7 minutes, that does not mean that you only have 7 minutes of peak productivity. So really try it out, see what you can do to kind of stay motivated. And then set a timer, see how long that lasts you. And then from there, try to build that. So if that only lasts you 40 minutes and you need to take a break, go for it. But try to get a little bit stronger the next time. And then take a break and take a walk, go have your snack in the kitchen, take your time on social media. Even for that, I would advise you get up, even if it's the other side of the couch, when you take your time on social media, to get away from your work placement. Over communicate with leadership. I think that this is a big one for anyone your guys' age. There's always been a thing that before COVID, working remotely was very common, was not very common. And one of the main deterrents for it is because there was no advancement. That people felt like if they worked from home, they didn't have an opportunity to show off what they could do in a corporate setting, rub elbows with the right people, and really climb that corporate ladder in terms of promotions. So and to be honest, that's very true. That's also a setback of why employers were not actively engaging with any sort of work from home policies. So now that we're all in this together, that has to change. And at the same time, any young professional who really needs to make those corporate relationships and have those networking moments is in a bit of a bind. And I'm sure you guys have all ran into that. And I've been sending lots of LinkedIn one-on-ones and things of that nature. And it's easy to feel like you're kind of lost in the shuffle. So make sure that you are communicating with your supervisor, your boss, your more senior colleagues, and check in. Sometimes it's as simple as in the beginning of this, when I was feeling like I wasn't having a personal connection with my supervisor, I was sending him an email either every day or at the end of every other day, just saying like, hey, this is what happened today. Like a quick summary of like, this is where I'm at, this is what I did, and this is what I plan on doing tomorrow, just so he was kind of in the know. And then I found him reaching out to me even more often to share the same things. and I felt more connected to leadership even above him. I think it's easy to send quick news articles, things you find that might be relevant to colleagues, to any sort of leadership, and just kind of offering support. This is like such a strange time with everyone adjusting. It's okay to be vocal, especially as there's downsizing or layoffs or people leaving companies, to jump in, raise a hand, and say that you can offer support for them in this time. I also think in that same vein with supervisors and senior leadership, while they're so focused on just making sure everything is still moving, there's never, there isn't as much opportunity for kind of a firm break. And volunteering to plan some sort of a social activity, whether it be a happy hour for your team or just a quick like weekend chat, catch up before you hit the weekend, is a great way to kind of level set and show some initiative with your team that you want to build that culture and help them build a culture in this unprecedented time. And yeah, I think going to that too, just networking in general. I think obviously LinkedIn is a place, and I'm sure you guys, again, if you're not, make sure you are connecting with people, sending messages, just trying to maintain relevancy with your counter or with your bubble. But I think internally as well, just it's okay to just check in. Again, like send through resumes, ask for resume help, anything to just kind of get the conversation going. I just as much as you guys are craving the networking support, colleagues are craving that like personal one-on-one that they're not getting in an office. Any questions there? No? Okay. The future of work from home.
We do have a question from Hassan, I guess. He raised his hand. Hassan, do you have a question? Hassan? Okay.
Oh, sorry. I was muted. Yeah. Then I want to ask you a question regarding how to juggle, like for the first time, your personal space and workspace is the same space. So how do you juggle both responsibilities, your personal responsibilities and work responsibilities, when you're trying to run away from one of them by working on the other?
Yeah, that's a great question. Do you mean like physically or just how you manage your time?
Both, actually. Like physically, when maybe you're taking a break from work and something personal pops up that you need to tend to when this is your break time.
Yeah. Well, I think that is always an issue even when you're at work. You know, like there will always be something that pops up at home or with friends or with family, or a doctor's appointment, or something's wrong with your car. Those are always things you had to run out of the office for anyway. And that's okay. Like those things, I think in the beginning, everyone felt like they had to prove to their supervisors and their leadership that they weren't taking advantage of work from home. Because I think the connotation before this was that working from home really meant you weren't working a full day. And I think this is proving that couldn't be farther from the truth. I think in the beginning, people were so desperate to prove they were working and also were so terrified about job security or didn't have job security that people were going above and beyond. And that's kind of the way that we've plateaued and leveled out, in that it's very common to not just work the 8 hours. So I think it's okay to have an interruption like that. Personally, I absolutely love the work from home culture. I think that I, for so long, was getting home from the office at 6 or 7 p.m. and then had just a few hours to like kind of get my life together before I did it again. So that's any errands, your laundry, you're like trying to like go to the gym, you're trying to get a good meal. And now you have this opportunity, if you have a half an hour break in meetings, you can go change a load of laundry, and you can go, you can preheat your oven so something is ready by the time you're done with your next meeting. So there is a way to kind of work in the same ecosystem and combine that, the work and life, for a balance, as long as you're not feeling like you're kind of, it's the pressure of both kind of weighing on you at the same time. I think, again, having that space of a divide, whether that is physical in like you work here, you play here. And again, that can be different sides of the couch. It could be as simple as you're facing a different way. just something that feels like you're turning it on and turning it off. Having the separation of browsers, again, super important to me. And I think, again, like just knowing that you would never work more than 8 hours, hopefully, that's not true for everyone. You have your certain time frame of what you were working before, and that shouldn't change just because you're saving an hour not commuting, 2 hours not commuting, and kind of getting rid of some of the other placements. I don't know. I think that this is such a strange time, but also a very large opportunity to kind of embrace how your work and your life can work together, as long as you know what time is yours. And it's definitely okay to shut down and not have to go somewhere. I think it was so common when you were running out of work to say like, okay, I have to leave at 5:30. I have to pick up my kids, or I have dinner plans. I have to go. It's okay to just go. It's okay to just say it's 5:30. I'm done. Whereas opposed to, we used to have an excuse. I'm like another example. My excuse was I was always trying to make a 6:30 workout class. So I needed to leave work by 6:10 p.m. If I didn't leave at 6:10, I'd be out, or I would miss my class. And all my colleagues knew that. I don't have that anymore. The gyms are closed. So I just have to be comfortable saying it's 6:10, I'm shutting down. And some days it's easier than others, but it's still, it will build and compound if you're not able to speak up.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
great.
Hi, Dana. I don't know if you can hear me. I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So just kind of like going off what Hussein was saying, managing your personal life and your work life. Pre-COVID, you're so used to going to the office, I assume. All of a sudden, you're stuck in this, in your home. Does it ever get to you mentally thinking like, I need to get out of the house? Or is it kind of, are you okay with working and living, let's say, in the same place?
No, it gets to me. I think it gets to the vast majority, especially if you're a social person. It's difficult to not have that banter. It's difficult. You take it for granted, talking about like a sporting event with a colleague that you're not even that close with, but you ran into them in the kitchen and you get that banter. You feel kind of connected in that way. I actually, a personal story, I was using like an hour break in between meetings to go for a run. So I would go on like a 5 or 6 mile run in between meetings because I just needed to clear my head. I needed to get out of the house. I needed to be active. And then by like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock every day, I was so tired and drained. Like I couldn't keep my eyes open. I couldn't spell very easy words correctly because my mind just wasn't there. And I actually went to an acupuncturist who was telling me that I was basically doing it all wrong. That the reason I was so depleted is because I was using so much brain energy and brain power, and then going for a run and like just wiping my body physically. So of course, by the end, it's like you shouldn't be taking a break with something difficult by doing another difficult activity. So she had to kind of coach me into saying, like, if you need to get out of the house, get out of the house, but you don't need to kind of put this much physical exertion on your body. Just go for a walk, or use an excuse to go run an errand. So like I will go run as simple of an errand as filling my car up with gas if I have a half an hour break and I need to get out of the house, or just walking to drop something off at the postal office, or at you sending out a shipment or something. I think you have to kind of find what your break is. I have friends who love cooking. So one of my really good friends actually has started making pizza, and she will like wake up before work at 6, 7 a.m. and prep the dough. The dough sits out for 4 hours. So in her lunch break, she's like repositioning it so it rises. And then after work, she's like in her last meeting already preheating the oven. And by the time 6 o'clock rolls around, she's got homemade dinner for everyone. And that's not, if you're not a cooker, I'm not saying try to make your life more difficult, but find those things that kind of bring you joy and that you normally on a weekend would feel like they're helping you relax, and see how you can implement them in your day-to-day. I think that getting out of the house is huge. even just like seeing the life, whether that be plants or wildlife or another human from a distance, will do a lot for your sanity, just to make it feel like you're not kind of in this alone, especially if you live alone. So yeah, if whatever you guys are feeling of like the strain of being in the same place, or just the mundaneness, everyone is feeling it. And while there are a lot of benefits from working from home, that's the one that we haven't quite been able to crack yet.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. The future of work from home. All right, so these are some companies who have announced plans thus far. We've seen a small percentage of them actually offer an indefinite work from home component. This is on a case-by-case basis, but all these companies are basically saying we're at least closed through 2021 or halfway through 2021. But from there, we will have some sort of model, whether that's permanently or a hybrid, that you can work from home. Another large portion of them have closed until the end of June, beginning of July. And you'll see like a commonality in a lot of these. It starts with the tech companies. Twitter and Microsoft were one of the first ones back in March to say that they were closed through the end of the year. And then a few months into that, they extended. And then you'll see all these companies are sort of following. And it really does feel like it's the large corporations leading the pack, starting with the tech giants, and then moving into the small, potentially non-global companies, and then followed by those startups who are like really hopeful that this isn't going to last as long. Then you'll see, again, work from home, people who are expecting to go back to work in about 6 weeks. I think we all know that's not going to happen. But these companies are still kind of holding out. And it's not so much, in my opinion, that they believe they're going to be back in January, as much as they don't have firm reopening plans yet, and they want to get things a little more cleared up before they send out communications to their very large corporations. Work from home post-COVID. So I think we talked about 88% of employees are loving working from home. There's only 12% who want to return full time, and the vast majority are actually looking for that hybrid model where perhaps you all you rotate days that you're going in the office. Potentially everyone is in the office for like an all hands meeting 1 day a week. I think it's really common for my role specifically at Spotify. My main office is in a satellite office. So while Spotify has 10,000 employees, this office that I'm normally out of is only 12 people. And those 12 people normally spend their time fighting for conference rooms and phone rooms because they're always chatting with people in different offices. So for someone like that, it makes a lot of sense for them to give up their lease and find a role or find a way to make to give everyone the resources they need, which really is more so having privacy in a phone room, which would make sense for them to work from home. There are some companies obviously that can't do the same. So Taco Bell, for example, although my role in marketing is fine from home, Taco Bell has a full industrial test kitchen. So they're testing products, they're testing ingredients. It takes up one full floor of the building. People don't have those kind of kitchens at home, and they shouldn't. So they need to get back in the office to do that because, for instance, next year there will be no new product innovation at Taco Bell because they haven't had the time or space to get employees in a place where they can come up with products that can be tested. So things like this, normally Taco Bell has a 16-month window from the time something is created in the test kitchen to when it gets tested for about a year, give it about 4 months to go to market. So better part of a year and a half. Essentially, for a year and a half, even if we got out of this pandemic tomorrow and we were back at an office where they could start kind of ideating these new products, it's still going to be about 18 months until anything new comes to restaurant. So people like that are part of that 12% that need to return into full-time work, or sorry, in full-time in the office. And some employee benefits, this is what people are saying what they love about work from home. It's time with family, it's the minimal commute, it's a flexible schedule, they're saving money. It's about $4,000 per year is expected to save by employee, and that's just commuting costs. I personally have not driven my car in about 2 months. I just keep turning it on to make sure the battery didn't die. People feel like they're more productive at home, or sorry, more productive at home, and less office politics, which I think is small but still worth noting in here. And then, excuse me, 60% of employers said that they would consider this hybrid or full-time remote work after the pandemic. And at the beginning of the pandemic, that was close to 20%. So we're definitely seeing that increase as time goes on and people are finding solutions to work from home. Any questions there? Cool. One last section for you. This is just a couple slides that I hope are takeaways for you. They are things that I've really that I've been told by colleagues and mentors, and it's really helped me. So hopefully it can do the same for you. So I think something really important to remember in your age bracket right now is, as confusing as this is to enter the workforce. Ooh. Sorry, can you guys still see that?
Yeah, we can still see it.
Okay. Yes, we can see it.
Great, my computer timed out, thank you. So as everyone is kind of entering the workforce in this new way of virtual work, it's kind of level set everything in a way. And the same way that you guys are kind of starting this emerging, you're burgeoning into this field or your selective fields, it kind of brings everyone back down to size. I think I've always used the example why I think internships are so important is less about the actual work you're doing and more about just having a free space to learn how to be in an office. It's like how your email system works, how you should sign emails, how you should, when they have free bagels on Friday, how you should conduct yourself, because it's different on how you would have how you have a bagel at home with your parents. It's how to work the printer. It's what to do when the printer is out of paper. Things like that, just getting in that rhythm. And we don't have that right now, but no one does. So at the same time, when you're learning how to kind of be virtual, so is everyone else. So it's really set the bar back down to normal. And as mentioned, the average, most employees were 45 years and up who had to go home and make these virtual connections. I think everyone has like a parent or a grandparent who doesn't know how to hold the phone on FaceTime and has 3 chins and sits too close. That was how that was how virtual working went for the first couple of weeks. People just weren't used to video chatting. So you guys being in a generation that is inherently more advanced with tech will really help you right now. And even more so, being able to kind of offer that support to your colleagues is huge. And I think you, in addition to that, and I know it's different for everyone, but majority of your generation does not have the same level of distractions that someone in that older age demographic has, like taking care of kids, taking care of parents, and having kind of more firm pieces that you can't get away from. So it's really allowed these college students, millennials, Gen Zs to step up and kind of knowing they understand the tech and not having as many distractions at home has been huge. Also, when you guys are kind of getting into that job search, because roles are remote, it's kind of it has opened up the geographic areas that you guys can look in. I, for instance, live about an hour south of LA. And I've been able to take another consulting role just north of LA, where normally I wouldn't drive an hour and a half for that every day or even once a week. But now, because it's all remote, I can do it from home and I can kind of take on more roles or different roles. So I think it's giving you some flexibility in your job search, as long as you're able to do the working hours. So for instance, well, this role is great. I'm the only one here likely in Pacific time zone and able to work with you guys. I just have to wake up a little earlier. So just be mindful of your working hours and location. This one is actually given to me by a supervisor, a senior vice president at Taco Bell. When I was talking about how it's difficult to understand kind of who you're speaking with on the phone. And there is an inherent difference in the way you would talk to an intern, a colleague, a supervisor, or an executive. But in this role, it's really interesting that, or in this world, it's really interesting that everyone in Zoom or Teams or Hangouts, whatever your Skype, whatever your your virtual connection of choice is everyone is in the same size box. So there's no corner office. There's no bigger space to sprawl out. There's no cubby desks in comparison to offices. Everyone is very much level set. And there's also an interesting piece. The way that most of these video chat services are set up, their audio is programmed for equilibrium, meaning if someone right now on the phone would start to talk, it would silence my volume a bit and raise yours. So there's no way, I'm sorry, to the point that they are equal. So I think it's very common, especially as much as I don't like it, for females in the office to get spoken over. This is an opportunity where we don't have that as much anymore because there is an equilibrium within audio alone, and males too. I think it's easiest to be the loudest voice in the room, but not always easiest to have the most eloquent thing to say. And virtual communication has really averaged that out for us. And interns and executives are the same size in a meeting. So you really have that opportunity to kind of speak up. So I would encourage all of you to use this opportunity. It's unprecedented. And this is probably my favorite one. I think you guys likely in the next few months to a year are going to be entering the workforce. And it's entering the workforce in a new capacity, meaning, and it's very easy when you're in an office, you obviously have an understanding of the floor plan, which gives you an understanding of an org chart. We don't have that here, but even better, when you're on Zoom or when you're on these virtual chats, everyone has a name tag. In that lower right corner, first and last name is there. You're able to take notes, you're able to look them up on LinkedIn really quick. Use it to your advantage, because when you're back in the office, you don't want to ask someone's name after you've met them 6 times. I don't know about you, I am terrible with names, but this is a way to kind of look at them, look at their name, try to give yourself some give yourself some reminders, or really let it cement, so you're able to remember it in the future, and use it as an opportunity to look them up on the side while you're in a meeting, as long as people can't tell that you're distracted. Figure out kind of where they came from, and hopefully learn something new about them so you can set up kind of a one-on-one or get to know them better. And that's it.
We have Mahmoud Saif. He raised his hand. Go ahead, Mahmoud.
Thank you, Lena. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you for the great presentation. I enjoyed many of the things, especially the browser trick. I personally use it, and I thought I was weird for doing so until you said it.
Oh, good.
Thank you for pointing that out. I have 2 questions. The first one is about the companies you mentioned. Generally, what makes a company decide to go indefinitely with working from home, other than the financial incentive? That's cost saving. If as an employee I want to negotiate for working from home, how do I do that? What do I leverage to do that?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on the industry. And obviously, I mentioned the Taco Bell example. That job, those roles will just never be remote. But I think as companies are realizing that employees are able to be productive in this lane, they're more likely to kind of change what they're able to do. You see it with the big tech giants first, because they're the ones who've been able to kind of invest in the infrastructure to make it work at home. They're the ones who are giving employee benefits like work from home allowance. So everyone has an office, a very nice desk and chair. So of course their employee surveys are going to say that they are enjoying working from home and want to continue it. Smaller startups where they're feeling like you need to kind of collaborate in the same room together and really like make a wall of post-it notes in order to kind of map something out. Those are the companies that are struggling a little bit more, and they don't have the resources to kind of to bring that infrastructure in a virtual environment. So those are the ones that are going to struggle a little bit more to go back to the office. I think being able to, whether it's in a hybrid a couple days a week or full time, being able to approach a supervisor, and I actually had done this previously a couple years back at Taco Bell, before work remote was a thing, was able to get 6 months of working remotely with my supervisor, essentially saying that I do feel like I'm more productive when I am kind of not distracted by things in the office. There were so many times I would go into the office and shut my lights off and close the door. I had like a window near the ceiling, so if people saw that my lights were off, they would think I wasn't there, thus leave me alone. And you like need that brain time sometime. So I had enough of those days and enough of a case to say, like, these are the things I can work on my own. If you ever need me, I'll fly in, that kind of a thing, which worked out fine for me. So it's really having that dialogue and also being able to kind of pull the chute if it's not working, giving your supervisor an opportunity to say, like, let's try this out for a month or two. If that's not okay, like, we'll figure out a new plan.
Such a great answer. Thank you. Is it okay if I ask another question, or is there somebody else who have questions? Oh, Hussein, you do? Okay.
No, I'm kidding. You go first, and I'll ask later.
Okay. So my other question is, working from home and delivering your achievement sometimes conflict. Like, it is not clear for employers that you are actually achieving higher productivity when working from home if you are that kind of people. So I just wanted to hear, I think from your experience, you know how to communicate progress when you're working from home, and I wanted just to have some tips from you on that.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of mentioned this, but in the beginning of quarantine, I was feeling very disconnected from leadership. So like I had my clients and supervisor, and normally I would have that hallway conversation, or just kind of, I would be presenting in meetings and people knew that information was coming from me. I felt connected to my boss, sort of, but never anyone higher than him. And I knew for advancement and for just to keep myself sane, I wanted to keep those relationships going. So at the end of, I was probably about every day for the first 2 weeks, I was sending like a recap of everything that I had done that day. Not everything, big things. And just so they knew that I was staying productive. And so that they knew, in a lot of ways, even, I was kind of doing things above my job description and taking some weight off my supervisor. And by giving myself some kind of more advanced projects, I was able to get in earshot of the larger leadership team and feel kind of more connected to the leadership. So I think that was really big. And eventually, like, that kind of stopped even. And my supervisor started doing that to me. So he would send something at the end of the day saying, like, this is where I'm at with these things. And we would kind of collaborate on that. I think that Google Docs are really big. I don't know if you guys usually use those where you can all edit them together. But being able, sharing something with your supervisor as just like an ongoing, like, this is what my week looks like. And as soon as you kind of figure out a task or add more to a task, resend it to them or add them in a comment section so they can see progress and how things are being done. Make it easy for them to see how much you're moving. Otherwise, it is easy to kind of get lost in the shuffle of all of it. And I think, again, like having, if anything, I feel like this time is more, it's more important to have like those small milestones. You typically kick off a project and then at the end you recap it. I think it's very helpful in this time to keep yourself sane and to keep your boss in your corner, to have smaller milestones than just the end of the project. So for instance, at Spotify, I'm working on a playlist campaign right now, getting more followers for a specific playlist. And normally I have a 4-week media flight. Normally I would start the media flight, make sure it's doing okay, and then really recap and adjust at the end of it. I'm finding myself going in and every 3 to 5 days saying, like, okay, we're up 3% of followers, or like, this is the traction we're getting from here and here and here, just so people see that like things are still moving and we're still staying relevant and have like kind of a reason to communicate.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Mahmoud, you basically asked the same question I want to ask, which was like when COVID first began, I think it was a year ago today. One of the biggest issues people were afraid of was how do they measure productivity? Like,
Mhm.
especially if it's not deliverable based. So what do you what are some comments you have on that? Like a way to stay productive and make sure that everyone is just as productive.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of a RACI. It's a roles and responsibilities chart. But I have seen those pop up a lot more often, and it really is about like keeping your team and yourself accountable for various pieces in a task. So I think it was easier to have kind of all hands on deck, roll up your sleeves, we're collaborating on a project together when you were in the office. And now it's more important to kind of have assigned roles and responsibilities to complete a project. You can't kind of like yell in the office like, hey, where are you at with that? You have to make a scheduled time to reach out to someone unless you have kind of an online chat, which is also very common. But for the most part, it's just not as simple. So that being said, when you start a project, really having an understanding of who's doing what, who's saying in our Spotify projects, that was part of it as well. Like you guys diving into figuring out like who's kind of owning each component of it. And I'm assuming that that feels, you guys have all been in university when you are in a group project together and have time to meet together and you just kind of figure it out. You don't have that anymore, or you don't have that right now. So it's really important in the upfront of a project to make sure that everyone is accountable for these specific tasks.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you. Mohammed, you can go ahead. You're on mute. That's the slogan of the year.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can hear.
Okay, great. So once in my previous internship, all of my teammates was working from the office while I was working remotely. And it was like I was being out of the loop. So my question is, how can I defeat this feeling to being out of the loop if they all working from the office and I'm working remotely?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I was at Taco Bell in the office, I had a supervisor who previously worked remote. She was a very big fan of the work remote culture, and she wanted to bring it into Taco Bell. So for years, she was trying to figure out a way that she at least could be remote half the time. But it takes a lot to kind of set up that dynamic. And I think that now that everyone has been forced to do it, it's much different. But my best example is she had a one-on-one meeting scheduled with someone, and they went to her office and said and sent her an email saying, oh, Sasha, you weren't in the office. Looks like we'll have to reschedule. Like, I'll catch up with you another time this week. And she was kind of mad and wrote back like, no, like there's a dial in on this. There's a phone number. Like, we can still have productive work if we're not in the same space. And I think that now everyone is kind of forced to do that. So I think my assumption would be if you ever went back into that place where you were remote and other people weren't, things would be a lot different, because people do understand that you are not just kind of goofing off when you're at home, that there is a way to be productive and in a way be more productive and kind of have your head down to crank on a task. I think that it's going to become very common for video chats to be a thing, even when you're back in the office. Video chats were active in 6% of offices before this happened, and now it's about 96%. So keeping that norm, and even if you have to be the hand raiser to say, like, I'm going to call into this meeting, can someone put up the video chat? I think is completely normal now, unlike what we were dealing with before. So I think there's kind of ways to infiltrate it. If anything, if you're going back to a culture where you're working remotely, but the rest of the team isn't, everyone knows what it's like now. So like, they've been in your position. I would be surprised if it felt as challenging, but there will always be things where you're going to feel out of the loop in social activities, those sorts of things. I think making a half an hour meeting, a 45-minute meeting, so you can kind of, shoot the shit a bit in the beginning of it and just kind of get a sense of, get to know your coworkers a little bit, is very important. but I would anticipate and hope that you will not run into that again.
Yeah, I'm sure it's now it's gonna be better. So thank you, Dana.
Yeah.
Thank you a lot.
Does anyone have a question? Anyone else? Okay, I think we can make it a wrap. Thank you so much, Dana, for this insightful and constructive session. Thank you so much for your time and for being with us here today. Yeah, I guess it's a wrap.
Thanks so much, guys. If any of you have any other questions, feel free to shoot me a chat if you want to set up some time to talk through anything, this or anything else. Happy to meet with you.